Life is full of tremendous beauty and inspiration, and it's full of tremendous anguish at missing Hav every day. We live with that in as active and engaged a way as possible, and we're in love. Our relationship is incredibly strong and complex and beautiful. We are constantly working to sustain that and feed it and grow it. It has been obviously such a tremendous anchor for us through this whole process.
Welcome to Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan. I'm Dr. Dan. This show is about making the world a more loving, accepting, and compassionate place, one parent, one person, and one child at a time. The key to raising healthy and engaged kids is for parents to seek the same in their own lives while striving to be the best versions of themselves each day. No matter who you are or where you came from, with increased awareness, you can be purposeful about leaving a healthy footprint for your children, your family, and all those you care about, while living your own life to the fullest. Today's show is Losing Our Daughter and Finding Our Way with Myra and Matt Goldstein. Myra is certified in compassionate bereavement care and is founder and project director for eMotion, a nonprofit she designed that helps people process and learn how to live with grief. She has written for numerous publications, including the Boston Globe, Upworthy, Hadassah Magazine, Kveller, and Today.com. Her new memoir, 57 Fridays, Losing Our Daughter, Finding Our Way, is just out. Matt is a physician, scientist, and entrepreneur. After the loss of their daughter, Havi, to Tay-Sachs, he joined JScreen, a national nonprofit offering at-home, comprehensive, and affordable genetic testing and counseling. Myra and Matt live in Boston with their second daughter and son. Myra and Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. It's an honor.
I have been really racking my brain with how to actually start. And what I decided was I just needed to go with it, because every time I tried to think about it, I would just have these jumbling thoughts in my head. So here it goes. Your book and your story is beautiful, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, life affirmative, all wrapped up in one. And having just finished it yesterday, I could tell you my heart hurt. It still hurts, and it changed me as a parent and as a person.
Wow. My gosh. Thank you.
And really, you both have given words to something that I think any of us, parents, non-parents, anyone who loves, would say there are no words. And yet to give words is it's a gift, and I know it's a journey.
Thank you for reading, for spending your time with our family, for having this conversation.
There's so many places where to go. The journal entries are so powerful. Your family is so powerful. Your community, and your relationship with one another. It just, I could feel it. And I guess I just keep talking when I really want to ask a question, which is, I guess one of the questions is like, how are you both? Like, how are you as life keeps unfolding?
It's a great question.
We are a constant work in progress. I think we have extraordinary, beautiful, full moments and days, and we have knee buckling, painful, difficult moments. And a lot of times those all happen at the same time, all at once. And I think that's this full inhabitation of grief that we've come to experience. We are such grateful parents to two living children who are both under the age of 4 and keep us incredibly engaged in the land of the living. And then we do everything in our power to continue parenting our oldest daughter, Havi, in a way that we had to reimagine. And so that all of that is sort of our daily reality. And I show up sometimes my best self and sometimes less than that. So.
Yeah, I think life is very full. It's full of tremendous beauty and inspiration, and it's full of tremendous anguish at missing Hav every day. And I think we live with that in as active and engaged a way as possible. And we try to channel those feelings into movement, into action. And we're in love. I think our relationship is incredibly strong and complex and beautiful. And we are constantly working to sustain that and feed it and grow it. It has been obviously such a tremendous anchor for us through this whole process. So that's important too.
Yeah. It's really important. And that's one of the things that really was clear to me about how connected you both were throughout this process, and clearly are. And yes, of course, there's days and there's weeks where you each are processing and maybe not in lockstep as usual, which for you guys seems very, very tight. And I was thinking what a blessing also, because we all know that with a loss like that and a stress like that, which that word doesn't even do it close to justice, how many relationships do have challenges and how people do drift away in their own grief, in their own experience. And so it is tremendous to have each other the way you do. The other, you were talking about the both, and something else that jumped out to me is the part of life, and then the word that you found, the sensune. Is that pronounced correctly?
Yeah, Setsuna, yeah.
Yeah. So please tell everyone about that that concept, which it seems like it embodies much of your lived experience.
Yeah, I think that idea is something that came to us in the time we're sort of stuck on the West Coast with Havi during the early days of COVID. And we're really living in a suspended state of existence, in this real in-between place where our understanding or our hope of what our life was going to be like had been shattered. And we were holding in our hands a beautiful child who we knew was going to die in some relatively near period of time. And the time that we had with her and the days that we had with her were incredible. They were full of laughter and joy and beautiful things, with each other, with family. And at the same time, there was this constant underlying thread of tremendously deep pain, almost incomprehensible pain in some ways. And those things were coexisting minute to minute, day to day. And it's a bizarre way to live. At least at the time, it felt like, how can you do this? How can you swing back and forth from what in one moment was the purest joy at being with your spouse and your child and doing something incredible, or seeing bearing witness to an amazing sunset, and then a moment later being almost brought to your knees by the reality of what we were facing. And I think that existence ultimately, in many ways, enabled those beautiful moments to be even more beautiful, to be even richer and more complete, than they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think that notion of Setsunai it embodies this integrated way of living that we've come to appreciate, that is so different from disintegration, which the prefix dis means to cut off or exclude. And when we disintegrate, we literally disintegrate. And so the way to survive when experiencing something that feels impossible to bear is to recognize, at least for us, that turning towards it and learning to weave it gently throughout our existence was the only way we were going to endure. And then to come back to that word of engagement, to engage in this world, in this land of the living.
Setsune, the ability to carry joy and sorrow at once. And it seems in our Western world that we do, we box everything up, and things are binary, and they're, and this is a completely different way of, it is integration, right? It's a way of acknowledging and being able to hold both, or all, or as it all comes into in moments in real time. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, to know that life is full of all of this, and we know this, but I think our coping and our minds try to do things to us to put in good or bad, or right, and it's actually not helpful. I think we miss out when we can't hold it all.
Yes.
Yeah, really well said.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 57 Fridays, and how I can't make the assumption. I feel like I've been living in your family for those years now. So I need to help you guys help me bring this out for all of the listeners, to talk about how this ritual came to be and what it meant. And man, we'll talk. I mean, I would talk COVID too. Like COVID for you guys has to have been to have your family, the world shutting down, and what that gave you during these 57 Fridays. There you go. I served it up. I said a lot. Go for it.
Okay. So we learned that Havi was going to die of a fatal neurodegenerative disease called Tay-Sachs on December 17th, 2019. And Matt and I had both been tested before Havi was even an idea, because we're Ashkenazi Jewish and know that we're at high risk. And devastatingly learned later that a physician error had been made in Matt's carrier screening, and he was misreported as not a carrier when in fact he was. And so on that day, December 17th, 2019, I think time collapsed and expanded at the same time. It was this moment of desperation and yearning, and this feeling that we had to find some sense of control in a world that we were now learning we would never, that notion in and of itself is not real, that we have any control. And for us, what emerged was this idea of honoring Javi every week, because we couldn't wrap our heads around as parents that she was only going to have 2 birthdays on this earth. And she, at the time, loved challah, which is egg-based bread that we eat in the Jewish tradition on Fridays at Shabbat. And she used to crawl, which in hindsight is unbelievable that she had the strength and the willpower to do that given her condition. But I used to, being sort of a type A athlete who didn't know any better, I would sort of place these bits of challah on our living room floor and try to incentivize her to crawl for them. And she would, and she seemed to love it. And so we were sort of holding this idea of how could we possibly only give our daughter 2 birthdays on this earth, with these questions around what brings her real joy and satisfaction, and how do we squeeze every moment of her life. And we came to this notion of combining a birthday with Shabbat and calling Friday evening Shabirthdays, which is where 57 Fridays comes from, because after her diagnosis, we had 57 of these Fridays where we celebrated her, we held her, we only invited people into our space who could see her as sacred and not scary. Mm-hmm. We laughed, we got her dressed up, and we stuffed ourselves. And then at the end of those Fridays, we just sort of fell into this pattern, Matt and I did, where one of us would start writing, and every entry would start with "Dear Beauty," and we would write to her. It was a way of communicating with someone who we couldn't communicate with verbally. And we started just alternating these entries to Havi. And obviously we were also talking to each other and starting to share these with a small community of people who couldn't be with her. And that process became one in which we were able to sort of see inside our own souls, to see each other's souls, and to start to bring Havi into life in a way that allowed people to fall in love with her and come along with us in a way that ultimately sustained us and still does.
And everyone knows that challah training is the number one training regimen for athletes. It's such a beautiful ritual, which I know ritual is a large part of, not only has been of your life, but also in your work, which we'll talk about. And it was such a powerful ritual, and to have your siblings with you, to have, your parents on each coast and people flying out. And this is early lockdown COVID. And then of course it progressed, but even now as we talk, it's hard for us to imagine what life was like back then, as we've re-entered. But it was, you had this community loving the amount of people in your circle. The love that they had and have for Havi was just extraordinary. I mean, the sleeping with her all night, everything. It was like she just had a whole tribe of love around her.
Yeah,
which is rare.
Hobbs posse.
Hobbs posse, yes, Hobbs posse. So when did the idea of, I know from reading the book, there was a strong message that we need to do something about this. Like, Matt, you being in the medical system, and working in very tough medical situations, it just became a passion. Like, this can't happen. This shouldn't happen. And Myra, with your words and your, I would say, drive, this culminated to new purpose, and has taken your lives on a related but different professional course, which it just seems so mission driven at this point for both of you.
You talk about your work.
Yeah, I think, well, there's sort of two components of it for me. One, and I think where it really started for me was, as you said, the mistake that happened, the error that the physician made in ordering the incorrect test for my carrier screening, is something that should never happen today. Just based on what we know and what our technological capability is, and how our systems are designed, this is the kind of thing that should never happen. And so many medical errors are like that, unfortunately. And as I dug into trying to understand how this happened and what went wrong, it really became clear to me that there is a major gap in our system, and a gap in our system around preventive genetic testing in particular. And we have this amazing capability in being able to use sequencing to identify the risk of disease for either a child that you're thinking about conceiving, or in the case of something like cancer or heart disease, or others. And it's really, really great technology, and it's relatively cheap, and we don't use it. And there are many, many reasons for why that is. But for all the families that are experiencing what we have experienced and continue to experience, we have to do better as a system. We really have to do better. And I was fortunate to find this amazing organization, actually introduced through Myra, as most good things in my life come from her, that are trying to do this work in a profound way. And the choice to join them and help in this effort, in some ways was the easiest professional decision I've ever had to make. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like an intersection of my personal life and my professional life into a real vocation and a real calling. And I think the other, maybe it's a little bit selfish, the other piece of this that I think has been really profound for me and beautiful is that this work is a way for me to be Hav's parent in some sense. It's a way for me to be her dad. I think in many ways, like, parents just love to talk about their kids. Like we love to see our kids out in the world. And we love to see them having an impact on a community and friends. And I get to do that with her every day. I get to talk about her and our story and what happened. And that is such an incredibly strong and powerful motivation, not only for me, but for the whole team and for the people that we work with. And that's I'm really lucky in the sense that that's a way for me to be her dad every day. So that's kind of how I ended up in this space. And I'm very grateful for it.
And when you say you joined, I believe you're the CEO.
Yes.
Very, very, very modest. So you joined it. You joined in a big way, and with that role, I imagine get to make a big impact.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's been an incredibly powerful and therapeutic experience to watch Matt take on the world in this way. I think among the hardest aspects of having a child die is the impact that it has on your partner. Like we talked about, and we obviously have an incredibly strong and enduring marriage, and yet it transforms each of us and continues to. And I think witnessing the sort of smartest, most creative, most giving person on the planet sort of be spun around and not know exactly what was next, and then to find this space and this platform that honors all of his gifts and talents in a way that also keeps Havi in the front row has been really just profound. And I think for me, and you touched on this about community and the power of our community, that's always been my anchor, has been this notion that we all have a right to community and that we can learn how to show up for each other in impossible times and in everyday mundane ones. And I think that started for me from maybe from a sport context or from a kitchen table education with my parents growing up, but never has that been on fuller display than during Javi's life and death. And so I sort of started from that place of community and built Emotion, this new nonprofit organization, around this concept that with the power of community, we can create these near peer sort of communalistic healing models that make access to relationships and enduring friendships possible for people who are too often sidelined by a culture that, as we've talked about, is kind of uncomfortable with such pain.
And you had also mentioned, you just wish that people were kinder to people grieving, right? Like just kindness. It seems, Myra, that your life around the dinner table and your sense of community, and then your movement, your sports, your soccer, your running, and then what you guys co-created during COVID, during the 57 Fridays and the Havi Posse. It's all in emotion. Like it literally, you put it all into emotion so others could also benefit while you continue to keep Havi alive through this work as well.
That's so beautifully said, and I'm coachable.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I'd like for you guys to talk about is what I'm calling the angels in your life, and how I know that they are still with you and in the work that you do. I'm talking about Blythe and Charlie and Dr. Joe. Say a little bit about them and how these individuals can come into your life and literally make all the difference.
Yes. Blythe and Charlie, maybe we start with Blythe and Charlie. They came into our lives actually on diagnosis day when a colleague of mine, who I called to say I couldn't attend a board meeting, said, I have someone that you must meet. And I nearly hung up the phone because I couldn't understand how she was going to play matchmaker in this moment where I just learned my daughter was going to die. And it turns out the person she wanted to connect me to and the people she wanted to connect me to were Blythe and Charlie, whose middle daughter, Cameron, died at the time 19 years earlier. And they each have devoted their lives to trying to soften and make gentler the experience of grief and loss, as well as make tremendous contributions to the world of prevention. But we then met Blythe and Charlie in person about 9 days after Javi's diagnosis, and they happened to live 12 minutes from our house. And we opened the door, and the way in which they looked at Havi, the way they held her, the way they physically and metaphorically held us and made us feel like non-aliens, I think saved our lives. And then what unfolded was just this beautiful, authentic friendship that is so rare. And I think we learned from them the power of sort of mirrors and windows, this notion that we're always looking to see ourselves in someone else. And we want a little window into what life could be like, but we don't want to be hit over the head with it when we're not ready. And Blythe and Charlie just navigated that dynamic exquisitely. They held our hand without pulling us forward. They listened, and they continue to be our sort of go-to people for day-to-day guidance now. Nothing to do with sort of extraordinary life-altering moments, just how to be. And I think for Matt in particular, his friendship with Charlie was really the first male friendship where he was, I think, able to be his full self in a way that that I think can be really difficult when we are so limited in terms of emotional language and sort of playbooks for how to be. And so I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we came to them at this moment where it felt like there was no path ahead. Or at least we had no idea what that path was. And it was also winter in New England, and very dark and very cold. And that obviously doesn't help matters. It was literally dark out. And we got to their house, and it was literally this warm, glowing beacon in the night. And that's what they were for us at that moment. And I think continued to be in ways that just went so far beyond anything I could have imagined, anything we could have imagined at the time. And I think my point about my relationship with Charlie, which has been a remarkable one and a transformative one for me, I think really speaks to not that it's specifically about gender, but I think it is more difficult for men. And I felt this profoundly, to go through something like this and to find support through something like this, and to do it in a way that is genuine and authentic and real and honest. And Charlie fell out of the sky for me. I think in some of the earliest conversations that we had when it was just him and I, his ability to be direct and honest and upfront about the hardest things in a way that almost caught me by surprise at the time. I'll give you a specific example. Was he and I went out one night after I put Hob down to a little pub near our house, and he was telling me about his experience with Cameron and around the period of time when she died. And he said, when you are ready and when you want it, I am happy to tell you about all the details of those moments, if that's something that you want, and I will take you through those scary things, and I'll be there with you. And it was like an open invitation, just putting out there the moment that I feared the most. And this was in an early conversation. It was so disarming. And he and Blythe were that way and have continued to be that way for us from that first time we met them.
So rare and special.
Yeah.
Before we go to Dr. Joe, can I just ask a quick question? Have you guys found, have you been in that situation now, being on the other side for others?
You have.
We are far inferior humans than Charlie and Blythe. We try to channel them in all moments. I think we've been sort of tragically blessed to now be in friendship with dozens of families and parents who have either lost their child or are losing them. And we often sort of have shorthand for, okay, well, what would Charlie Blythe say? And so that roadmap is just a part of our DNA now.
Yeah, I think I will, just to add on what Mai said, I think, I hope that we can, and that I can be that for someone in the same way that Charlie was for me. And it's hard still, and it will always be, I know, but it hasn't been that long since Hav died, and I find sometimes that I don't know how to show up in the way that I would like to, or in the way that I would expect Charlie to. And there have been plenty of moments in conversations with people who have been introduced to us or that we've met, where I find myself saying, in hindsight, saying something that I wasn't exactly what I had hoped to say, and it's only half an hour later or after I talk with Mai that it's like, oh, I should have said that, I should have said that thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's like still some maturation and evolution that I need to do in particular to get there. But it's something that I hope to be able to do in the way that Charlie did and that Blythe did for us.
Yeah. Given that they were 19 years into it, and obviously really special people, and you guys are so fresh, I have no doubt over time, with experience and with, I want to say with time, and I'm not saying it in the sense of like time heals. I mean in the sense of time going by as you continue to process and have these experiences. I imagine the words will continue to flow. You guys are like still new to all this, right? I mean, you're professionally fully engaged. And Myra, I want to hear about emotion in a moment here. You're fully engaged, and yet it's still all so new.
Yeah, I think it's always going to feel new. And in some ways, that, to bring Dr. Joe into the conversation, I think she has been my sort of mentor in this space. First came to us as our grief counselor and continues to be, and then has become my sort of professional mentor as I've embarked on this kind of grief literacy and grief activism path. And one of the things that she said to me early on in my training under her is, you have to stay close to the pain in order to be able to show up and be with people who are in that kind of pain. And so I think in some ways, the closer we are to our true feelings and our real raw experience and are in touch with our deepest yearning, I think that kind of energy and awareness is how we walk with people in a way that lets them be seen and heard, and not in a way that makes them feel rushed or colonized or minimized. And so often I think we do that. We see someone experiencing something, fill in the blank, and we know that that particular acute experience is going to end and their life will continue. And so we sort of skip ahead as a friend or a family member or as a practitioner and try to show them what's on the other side. And that has felt hurtful and minimizing to me in a way that I try to stay close to, so that when I am walking alongside someone else, I meet them where they are and trust that they have the strength and the capacity and the self-trust to be able to move with this pain however they need to.
And that takes a lot of grounding, because it's human tendency, I think, to say these, to either dismiss, it'll pass. Oh, well, at least you have your others. Well, all of the, I often find that's from the individual's own discomfort, right? And it's like it's trying it. It's not going to land well, but it's because we, especially in our culture here in the West, have such a difficulty with death that we don't know how to talk about it, and it makes us so uncomfortable, unlike other cultures. And so it is so important what you're saying, and what I've learned both in my professional practice and as a person, that I got to take responsibility for what's going on inside me and just do my best to regulate and to sit there and to be there and to stay present. And it's not my job to make myself feel better or make them feel better in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah, super well said. Yeah, Myra talks a lot about being in touch with your own pain in terms of being able to show up for others across a spectrum of situations and scenarios. I think that's so important and really hard to do, and not something that we do in our society at all.
So, Myra, tell us about emotion. I love the word. Everyone, it's E-motion. I'm guessing has something to do with emotions and movement. Just a guess.
Just a guess.
Yes.
That name is complete credit to my mother, who's the ultimate linguist. Emotion blends sort of three elements that have been so important for me and for us in moving with the fact that Havi isn't on this earth with us. And those three elements are movement, community, and ritual. And this idea of movement as this regulating force that can be a companion to us when we are trying to face and talk about and be with the most excruciating pain. And that regulating force has a lot of neurophysiology behind it. And the science that I am most familiar with from another mentor, Dr. Bruce Perry, is this idea that patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity in motion is that same sort of evokes that same somatosensory memory that we have from the time we were in our mother's womb and heard her heartbeat, as he talks about and writes about. And that is the sort of regulating motion that always trumps any traumatic shard that we are experiencing. And so it's no wonder Matt and I needed to go on a run together when we were talking about or discussing sort of the most painful aspects of what we were each feeling. It's easier to do that in that motion. And then the power of ritual really came from first living this 57 Friday reality and continuing to rely on ritual after Javi died. I needed to make a blueberry smoothie every morning after she died because I needed to hear that blender and I needed to see that bright blue, purple that we fed her every day for her last several months of life. And what I came to live and understand, and then further research, is that I think Suki Miller, and it's in the book, says, ritual is the antidote to helplessness. And so when we can have these anchors that are predictable and that create these containers to be in conversation with what's most meaningful to us, and those can be public or private, we get some sense of sort of understanding that we're going to be able to move through this day or this week. And so that was the second sort of element of emotion. And then the third is community, which is that so often we pathologize grieving people, and that leads to isolation, or it can. And that what we need most is to be a part of something, to feel like we are in community with others, and not necessarily just with others who have experienced a similar thing, but with our friends who have always been our friends and who we hope never go through what we have. And that sense of community keeps us tethered here. And so emotion sort of calls on those three elements and offers programming directly for grieving people in the form of these movement communities that are 10-week experiences that include both individual and group-based aerobic activity that's very moderate, and also these kind of gently guided grief prompts and contemplations. And then the second component of the organization is focused on grief literacy and education for people who just want to learn a language of loss because they know either they need it for themselves or they want or need it for someone else. And so we offer those experiences for any organization or company.
That's awesome. I think it's awesome what you've created, and awesome, Matt, what you're doing. And I know the last thing you would want it is to have the reason that you're doing it. And yet Javi's life is, as a result, is impacting and going to continue to impact so many humans and families as life goes on. One more ritual I want to throw in here is you had birthdays, and then later came Havi moons. And it just also speaks to your evolution and how, one ritual doesn't have to stay a ritual. We can add rituals as life continues to unfold. So we've talked about birthdays. Tell everyone a little bit about the Havi moons.
The Havi moon, I think you heard Matt make reference to the dark, cold New England nights, and he's a California boy. So when we got Javi's diagnosis, I think what felt like a massive pull for him was to get his girl out west and to try to show her as much natural beauty as we possibly could in a period of time that was going to be so limited to days, really. And so we, thanks to the generosity of our employers, were able to take a few weeks and spend them on the West Coast driving, the three of us. Actually, I was pregnant with Kaya, so the four of us, I suppose, driving along the West Coast, being in this state of wanting to immerse Javi and us in as many new spaces and places that meant something to Matt, and to show her sunsets and the sand and big open skies, and to fall in love with purple skies, and to take long walks and relish in them, and to lie to waiters who asked us how old she was, and to tell them that she was 10 months when she was older than that, because we didn't want to, in those moments, we didn't want her to be seen as a dying child. We wanted her to be seen as a child who was getting her footprints and her handprints all over this earth and playing in a way that she wouldn't be able to play fairly soon after that Havi moon ended. So it was really, I think it was really an opportunity to sort of give her a playground, and a playground actually the playground was such a cueing and difficult space for us to be in the traditional sense with the slides and the swings and all the things that she couldn't do. And so this was sort of Mother Earth's playground for Hav to just soak in and swallow up.
Yeah, and I think going forward, now we find ways to bring her to new places in a different form, but to try and continue to put those footprints and handprints and sense of existence in new places that we go to with Kaya and Ezra and the rest of the family.
So much more to ask, and we are running low on time. So I will go with your memoir. What is your hope for this beautiful memoir?
My hope is that, one, I think that we can all see children, the ones that we can see and the ones that we can't, as incredible forces of good, and listen and learn and follow their lead and believe them and trust them. And so I really want to honor just like the power of children. And I think, secondly, I want to dissolve this intimacy barrier that I think exists for people who are experiencing loss, any kind of loss, and make sure that there are companions, whether they're on pages or in people, that feel like they're a source of comfort and safety for people who need it. And maybe finally that that it's a memoir that our systems can benefit from, because maybe it changes their perspective on the way we all support families in the medical system.
I mean, I think Myra said it beautifully. Those are my wishes too. Maybe the one thing I'll add is that there were a few books for us that were companions, especially early on, and they were tremendous resources. And the hope that this book can be that for someone else, I think is one of the greatest gifts and one of Hav's greatest gifts. And I think it is. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but I think what Myra put together can be that and is that.
Yes. I concur. And as I was listening to you both talk, I was thinking about all of your journal entries and, the rawness of putting yourselves out there. And it clicked for me, and you probably already know this, but I want to say it, is that you are doing what Blythe and Charlie did for you both by putting your words out for everyone to get to experience in a way that's in a way when they're ready for it, right? There were some of those that I would read and then I'd move on, and there are others that I'd read and then I'd read again, and there are others that I would then go back to, and I also found there were others that I was reading really quickly through because it was so painful. And so I think that's the beauty of it, is it's out there for others as a guide and a window into all of the feelings and all of the emotions and all of the stages where they can step in and out of as they are ready or not ready, depending on where they are in their process. Okay. I guess we're at the parent footprint moment question, guys. Here we go. Okay. Tell us about a time that you became aware of yourselves as individuals as parents, or even an awareness of your own parents. And that new awareness had a positive impact on your life, your kids, and or those you love.
I'll start. It's a beautiful question. The moment that comes to mind for me was a moment before Hav got the diagnosis of Tay-Sachs. It was in the fall of 2019. We had a diagnosis of developmental delay, and we're in the process of trying to figure out what was going on and to support her. And so it was there was a lot, it was a tumultuous time. There was a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And I was driving to work in the morning, and I was stopped at this stoplight. And there was a father and a daughter crossing the street. And he was holding her hand. She was wearing a backpack. She looked like maybe she was 6 or 7. And I watched them walk across the street. And at that moment, I remember this sensation of being completely overwhelmed by the reality that what I thought my life was going to be like as a parent may not be that. And I almost, in some ways, felt like I saw that vision of what my life was going to be kind of crumble in front of my eyes. And that moment marked for me that we have to live as best we can in extraordinary moments, not in ordinary moments. And the beauty of just walking your child across the street and being able to hold their hand is an incredible thing. It was such what I would have given at that moment to be able to do that with Hav. Was everything. And it was an extraordinary moment that was tremendously mundane. And I think that was the beginning of a true transformation in how we have tried to approach our life, and obviously how we tried to approach Hav's.
Yeah. Just so much what we take for granted. I'm just flashing on dad experiences with our kids and how much we take for granted. And I can only just imagine what that does for your presence with Kaya and Ezra. I know you're still human and you still have regular life, and but yet I have a feeling you can drop in probably easier than many to cherish those moments.
You can. Mine is about my dad and also about a moment with Kaya. And when I was growing up, my dad would always leave notes on the kitchen table with little stick figures drawn that would sort of illustrate where he was or where he was going or wish me luck. And so there would be, if I was gearing up for a soccer game, there would be stick figures with soccer balls and, who knows. And a few months ago, I knew I was going to miss bedtime with Kaya. And so I found myself writing her and then drawing one of these notes that sort of called on my dad in a way that just sort of filled me up. And I am the worst artist in the world. And I had so much fun trying to draw Kaya a note that would mean something to her. And when I snuck into her room later that night to give her a kiss, I saw the note tucked into her pillow. And it just crushed me in in the best way.
Right.
And I think that was a moment where I sort of watched myself as this kind of proud, adoring daughter, also being this proud, adoring mom. And I really loved the opportunity to reflect on that because of your beautiful question. So
that is a That's beautiful. That is parent footprint, right? The generations of the positive footprint placed on you in this instance by your dad, and passing it on to your daughter, who very good chance will be passed on again. That's just beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, thank you both. Just for sharing yourselves and with us today, with me today, and of course, your book, your memoir, your words, your memories, your life, and I know, and Havi, and like keeping Havi alive. More people know Havi and will know Havi than I'm sure you ever imagined would know Havi, and so Javi's with me now as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Please, before we stop, let's one more point people towards J-Screen and towards Emotion, so people know, and of course, where to get your book, which is just out as this recording, where to find all of these important resources.
So if folks are interested in learning more about J-Screen, they can go to www.jscreen.org. There's tons of information there, and any questions, just feel free to write on in.
And Emotion's website is slightly more complicated. It's www.emotion-mc.org. The MC is for Movement Community. And then for anyone who wants to read 57 Fridays, you can get that on bookshop.org or Amazon, or really, I think it's available anywhere. So just 57 Fridays. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone listening, this is something to lean into. I promise you it will enhance your life by reading this story. I promise you. So please share this episode with everyone and anyone that you think will benefit, which I'm sure is everyone you know. Thank you for being a part of our community. We always appreciate your reviews and your ratings. It really does make a difference for us. The final two things I'm going to ask you to do: try to be that person you want your child to become, and ask yourself the guiding question: what footprint do you want to leave? This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Strummerman, composed and performed by Pro Tunes. Artwork is by Garrett Ross. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Footprint Podcast, and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, go to exactlyrightmedia.com.